All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We often treat cyber threats like there's some abstract concept or a wild plot from a sci-fi movie. But as we're going to see today, it's actually a highly active, totally urgent battleground, one that directly targets everything from your personal identity all the way up to the massive national power grids keeping our cities running. Here's our roadmap for the day. We'll be hitting the cybersecurity landscape, the anatomy of an attack, the human weakness, systems under siege, and finally, mastering digital hygiene. So let's kick things off with Section 1, the cybersecurity landscape, and define this digital battlefield. Okay, so computer security, it goes way, way beyond just guarding your everyday passwords. Since digital infrastructure is literally woven into every single part of our daily lives, we're now tasked with defending the whole shebang. Everything from the smartphone in your pocket to the sprawling networks that keep our modern society functioning. It's wild to think about, but a single breach today, it can trigger massive real-world disruptions. Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of an Attack, where we'll be understanding digital pathogens. It's actually fascinating how closely computer security mirrors human biology. We hear terms like virus and worm tossed around all the time, but the distinction between them is absolutely crucial. Think of it like this. A virus needs you to unwittingly invite it in, maybe by opening a sketchy file or clicking a bad link. But a worm is a pathogen that replicates entirely on its own. It spreads from device to device without a single human finger lifting. It's a completely self-driven infection. And honestly, this landscape is evolving incredibly fast. We're now dealing with what's called polymorphic threats. Basically, these act exactly like mutating viruses, constantly changing their signature to sneak past our digital immune systems. And these attacks, they don't just use one method, they're multi-vector. They might infiltrate through the web, via an email, or through an app, and then they quietly move sideways inside a network. All the while, they're constantly changing form to remain totally undetected by standard defenses. Talk about a moving target, right? Which brings us to Section 3, the human weakness, or what I like to call the flaw in the firewall. Now, you might assume that some super sophisticated software is to blame for most of these breaches, but despite the billions of dollars spent on secure architecture, it turns out our own cognitive biases are the easiest vulnerabilities to exploit. Hackers use social engineering, basically weaponizing human emotions like urgency, fear, or even our natural desire to be helpful, just to convince us to hand over the keys. They'll impersonate your CEO, a trusted contractor, or your bank. Because, let's face it, tricking a human being is often way easier than hacking a multi-million-dollar firewall. And here is a frankly staggering reality to wrap your head around. To put a financial scale on this kind of human manipulation, the FBI reported that simple business email compromise scams, like getting an email that just looks like it's from your boss, desperately needing a wire transfer, cost U.S. businesses a massive $2 billion in just a 2-year span. $2 billion. That is a shockingly low-tech method yielding devastatingly high-value results. All right, let's shift gears to Section 4, Systems Under Siege, covering everything from charities to critical infrastructure. A recent UK study really highlights just how indiscriminate these attacks are today. They're sweeping right across the board, drastically impacting not just wealthy corporations, but medium-sized businesses and even high-income charities. See, while large businesses have beefed up their security big time, attackers have simply pivoted. Small and mid-sized businesses often don't have those advanced defensive tools, making them the absolute prime targets for ransomware and phishing. The big takeaway here? Nobody, and I mean nobody, is too small to be a target. If we track this chronologically, we see a massive, frankly scary escalation in both intent and damage. I mean, it starts way back in 1988 with a university student's basically benign Morris worm that just wanted to count the machines on the internet, though it accidentally slowed them down. Fast forward to 2010, and you've got the literal physical destruction of nuclear centrifuges by the Stuxnet attack. Then, the massive 2013 Target data breach that compromised 40 million credit cards. And finally, we land on the 2021 Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, which literally caused fuel shortages across the entire U.S. East Coast. The stakes have clearly skyrocketed. And as the Internet of Things expands, these cyber attacks are increasingly becoming very real physical threats. Hackers are successfully targeting hospital diagnostic equipment like pacemakers and insulin pumps. They're remotely hijacking cars and even unlocking internet-connected smart locks on front doors. Experts actually call these cyberkinetic attacks, and they are seriously on the rise. In one famous test back in 2015, hackers remotely carjacked a vehicle from 10 miles away and drove it right into a ditch. So basically, if a device has an internet connection, it's got a potential entry point for an attacker. It's wild. Let's bring it home with Section 5. Mastering digital hygiene and inoculating your digital life. Now, for organizations, having a documented incident response plan that covers preparation, detection and analysis, containment, and post-incident activity is absolutely crucial. It's the best way to stop an intrusion before it completely derails everything. You got to prepare your team, rapidly detect anything suspicious, isolate the affected systems to lock down the spread, and finally, do a thorough postmortem so it never ever happens again. But for you, as an individual, everyday digital hygiene acts as a daily vaccine. Honestly, it's exactly like personal hygiene. By simply updating your malware protection, performing cloud backups, strictly using two-factor authentication, restricting admin rights, and keeping those network firewalls active, you're literally scrubbing away the vulnerabilities that attackers are banking on. Sure, it takes little routine discipline, but man, it is incredibly effective at keeping you safe. So I want to leave you with this thought to really chew on. In a world full of infinite vulnerabilities, are you an active part of the digital immune system, or are you inadvertently leaving the front door wide open? Remember, security isn't just an IT problem anymore. It is a collective effort. Every single updated password, every verified link, it all makes the entire digital ecosystem that much safer for all of us. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer. Stay curious and stay secure.